What's up, people? I'm Shaggy the Opinionated Hippie, and this is my album of the week for the week of October, I don't know, October 4th through October 10th, 2024. And I'm going to just cut straight to this chase. It's a death metal album, Blood Incantation, Absolute Elsewhere. If you're not into death metal, this is the only favor I ask. Give the album 5 minutes, the first 5 minutes, because what you have is the first 2 minutes is a good, healthy, awesome death metal section. Maybe like a 30-second, what could be prog metal intro, maybe a little heavy prog. Then we drop into about a minute and a half of really pure, clean, riff heavy, dual guitar action, just amazing, amazing death metal. But at the 2 minute mark, this band drops into prog heaven. Space prog, 1970s, Richard Wright infused, David Gilmour-esque guitar solo, Pink Floyd all the way, prog heaven. And if you're ever going to give a death metal album a chance, this is the one, because it truly is prog death metal. It is probably 60-40 maybe, death to prog, and there are like healthy sections of death metal that drop into gorgeous prog metal portions. A lot of Pink Floyd energy, a lot of sort of Baroness type energy, more recent prog metal band with more softer proggy tendencies, I guess. And then a couple times toward the end of the two songs, there are two songs on the album, each divided into 3 parts. They kind of meld the two a little bit, so you get these extended death metal sort of riff motifs that are just like repeated in sort of a relentless prog sort of way. So that's what I ask. If you're like, oh, it's a death metal album, I'm done, give it 3.5 minutes. At least make it to that 2-minute drop, because I think you'll be like, okay, maybe this band has something to offer. So, Blood Incantation. They're out of Denver. I think this is their 3rd prog album. They had like an instrumental sort of weird thing that they did. But this is not the prog album. This is their 3rd like complete proggy death metal album. Absolutely fantastic band. I think each of their previous 2 sort of full-on death metal releases made my end of the year top 10 list. This album itself, Absolute Elsewhere, is named after a band, or maybe one guy who called himself Absolute Elsewhere, dropped an album called In Search of Ancient Gods that was completely instrumental, at times cheesy, at times beautiful, at times haunting, just this really awesome album back in the 70s. I think the one guy played like almost all the instruments or something, but it's named after that. Yeah, good. It's honoring that, because the prog stuff on here is fantastic. And I like death metal even without the prog elements, but you throw in this prog and this type of prog and the way they meld together and the way they contrast, like this is easily in the running for album of the year. And right now probably is my album of the year. If this was the end of the year, I've only listened to it for like a week, so there's that recency bias. There's a couple others that are up for contention, but I freaking love this thing. It's like a perfect prog metal album, prog death metal album, death metal. Let's throw the death metal in there. There's some thrash elements. There's some stoner rock that seeps in, a little Iron Maiden riffing that throws on towards the end, riffs galore, guitar playing's great, a couple like classical type proggy solos in here, and prog sections that are stunning. The first song, broken up into 3 parts, which is the first half of the album, it's about just under 20 minutes long, is called Stargate, The Stargate. First part is 8.5 minutes long, starts off with like this nice proggy intro. We go into about 1.5 minutes of death metal. Then we drop into this prog section that starts off really calm. It's got some really awesome percussion elements that kind of remind me at times of Copeland's playing on The Police's Walking on the Moon. Just that little like echoey, bouncy repeat vibe. And then it just kind of slowly builds, and they layer these really low bass notey synths on. And then about quite a while in, about 2 minutes into this, just this straight up Richard Wright sounding synth solo begins, this keyboard solo that is just awesome. We get that for about 45 seconds. Then we get this guitar solo that could be David Gilmour. It's just got that David Gilmour tone and that build and that energy, and it's absolutely perfect. And then about 3.5 minutes after we get this prog section, we go back into the full-on death metal groove, and we finish out like we started. Really nice tight riffing. The bass drum action on this is just absolutely ridiculous. It's mic'd so incredibly well. About the 7-minute mark, this stoner rock groove kind of seeps in. Fantastic. When the song ends, we go right into this really kind of bass synth proggy type quiet segue. We get some spoken like pre-recorded actions in this. This is in Stargate Tablet 2, Part 2. The song's about 5 minutes long. And we get like some what sounds like audio from a movie or a radio show, a la like what Pink Floyd would do a lot. The synths kind of nicely build. I think Tangerine Dream, or at least a member of Tangerine Dream, appears on the second track, and we got a really chill, nice, that kind of proggy synth vibe. That kind of builds and builds for about 3 minutes. Then this acoustic guitar kind of drops in with sort of a Hey You type vibe with these nice, like darker synth tones just kind of floating above. We get these like boom, boom bass drops that come in. Just all around prog spaciness with an acoustic guitar kind of grounding it. Slowly building for about 4.5 minutes, and then just straight up screaming death metal action comes in for like the last, 30, 40 seconds of this. Go into this awesome deep groove. Then we quickly end up into the Stargate Part 3, and this is just like, we get a really nice, tightly wound death metal just riff. This one is this last section of Tablet 3 of the Stargate is about almost 7 minutes long. Very manic. You get just like this is like death metal. We're like, we're going here, now we're going here, now we're going here, now we're going here. Like, we are all over the map. And at the end of the song, lyric-wise, I think the Stargate is actually about to open. And it feels like musically, we have just this frantic buildup to get all the like right people in the right places, and got to do all this before we open the Stargate. We need some stoner grooves and some death metal runs and all this crazy stuff. We're changing directions like every 30 seconds. And then once the Stargate opens, we just get this really quick, almost like meltdown at the end before we go into like the next song. 3 songs essentially, but the first half of the album is just absolutely perfect with just 2 really awesome extended prog interludes. Pretty much the middle section of Part 1 and almost the entirety of Part 2. Then we get the message. This is broken up into 3 parts. The first part is about 6 minutes long. This has an almost poppy feel. It's probably not the right word, but it's a lot more accessible. It's almost melodically hummable. The intro to this is kind of welcoming in a weird way. It has this very, I guess, low-key driven energy about it. It's not the most manic over the top. It's a nice contrast to the song that preceded it, but it's still like death metal. We're eventually going into these crazy death metal like runs and switches. Really nice guitar solo in the middle of this that has this kind of epic proggy feel, like your traditional soaring solo, right? And then we go out of that in some really nice like chugging, almost sludgy riffs that we kind of toy with for a little bit. Then we go into the message Part 2. And this one, we get a straight, way more proggy vibe. We get this really just very like 2000s proggy synth to open up. And then we go into like a little more aggressive, but not like full death metal, sort of math rock, early 2000s prog sounding, that very almost like too clean metal sound that a lot of bands had in the early 2000s. We get that for a while. Then we go and we get these almost like background choral vocals that kind of remind me of Baroness, the way they would like sing some of their slower songs. We get these really nice, then after we kind of set up the mood for this, this might be the best song on here, The Message, Tablet 2. We go into this really, really long, what is it, about 4.5 minutes long jam that could be right in the middle of Pink Floyd's of Animals. You could have dropped, this could be the middle of Pigs. This could be the middle of Dogs. You almost have that dun, 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 that like progression that they're playing in Pigs. You got vocals that sound like David Gilmour could have been singing these vocals. It's got this really nice sort of escalating build before we drop back into the just frantic death metal that kind of reminds me of Baroness's Cocainium. Just that kind of rollicking, almost riding along like in the countryside, but it's getting faster and faster and faster and faster and faster and faster and faster, and then just freak out crazy death metal action. The drop is just ridiculous, and the groove they drop into is just going to pummel you to death. Pretty much how the song ends. And then the last 11.5 minutes is this super adrenalized sort of like Iron Maiden type groove, maybe a more traditional metal, but it's just full on, just crazy. Even hear a little like Judas Priest in there, but if Judas Priest was like taking way too many amphetamines. We get some nice vocals around 2.5, that Baroness singing. We get a really nice solo again. But we get like a drum solo, spacey jam at one point in this. But the end of the song kind of rides almost this groove for like 3 or 4 minutes. It's very hectic. It's kind of crazy. It's not the most relaxing thing, but it has this very, very repetitive sort of feel to it, which makes it just feels like it's intensifying and escalating and getting bigger. But it's got that prog sort of idea of just kind of riding the same idea over and over and over again. But it just happens to be like a death metal idea, so it's kind of frantic and crazy. And the guy on the drums is just like, I don't know how his ankles are not broken at this point. Yeah, this album is like perfect. And all I ask, if you don't like death metal, if you're averse to the idea of like all things death metal, listen to the first like 4 or 5 minutes. And if that doesn't like convince you that, hey, this band has something to offer, then you're missing out on a lot of really good music. That's all I got to say. Right now, it's a contender for album of the year because I think this thing is just, it's the bomb. But yeah, that's all I got. Highly, highly, highly recommend you check this out. Let me know your thoughts if you do. Yeah, it's a beast. It's a beast. All right, that's all I got. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, like, share, comment, do all those things, and peace. Talk to you later.